I think one of the biggest challenges that we as content producers have is we're now transmedia content producers. We may not have been trained that way, we may not have started out that way, but that's what we are. And what I mean by that is I'm no longer being asked to deliver one show in one format, in one time frame that's going out through one distribution channel. I might be producing that show, I might be producing a shorter form version of that show that goes out on social web, I might be producing ancillary content that supports social media channels that are related to that primary content. So my whole workflow has changed in the sense that, of course, I'm still delivering, but I'm delivering multiple things to multiple people, often in multiple formats, multiple time frames, sometimes multiple languages. So it's a different experience, and you really have to understand the whole workflow from end to end a lot more. You have to plan a lot more because you have to future-proof things as well, because people are going to be reusing some of those assets, and so you actually have to deliver them in a way that people can find them again and understand what that content has for them. So as an example of that, I always speak in my workshops about how important it is to get transcriptions made of interviews. And a lot of people don't understand that if they don't come from kind of an old school way of doing things. But in reality, if you're putting up clips on a website, you want to know exactly what clips you might put, watch the rest of the interview here. You might be you're probably closed captioning that or open captioning it. So having those transcripts ready to go is going to make that process entirely easier. We might be doing the short version of one soundbite and the long version of another one because it might be translated into another language and need a longer clip. So all of this stuff is going into the whole process of workflow and planning. So it's a different perspective of the producer. It's a little more 50,000-foot view than maybe some people used to have, sort of being down in the trenches. So you talk about risk. Yes, I think there's some risk in being a content producer. There probably always was risk. I think what's different now, though, is that in some ways we have more control if we plan ahead. You're going to get into a real bottleneck if suddenly you're just delivering your 60-minute show and somebody says, wait, we need behind-the-scenes content, we need audio outtakes of all the interviews, we need X, Y, and Z. If you don't know that's coming, then yeah, you're going to be taking a big risk. So the key for us is asking the right questions at the beginning. So whereas I might have been originally asking questions about story arc, I might have been creating storyboards for one kind of story development, now I'm asking questions about where is my viewer? What's the environment they're viewing in? Are they viewing on a small surface, a big surface? Are they in a room with other people? Are they by themselves? Are they drinking a latte in a coffee shop and listening to it on earbuds? Are they sharing an earbud with their friend? That's a big issue we now have in sound mixes, that we have to actually think about a mono experience again. So there are many more questions that I'm asking at the beginning. As long as I know the questions to ask, I'm going to be okay delivering the content to different platforms at the end of the spectrum, at the end of the process. Well, a good example would be the opening shot. Once upon a time, I might have taken my time getting into the story. I work in nonfiction world, but I still have a story and I still have a story arc, and I might introduce my characters in a certain way. I might need to introduce them a lot faster now because we have things like drop-off rates online and people want to get engaged with the story in the first 30 seconds or they're out of there. So I might not have time for a long tracking shot. I might not have time for that aerial opening master shot. I might have to just jump into my story, and actually I find myself starting with close-ups, which I never would have done in years past. It was sort of a backwards way of starting the story. It's like engaging the viewer, what's going on, what is that hand doing, where am I, and then backing up and bringing in the rest of the story. So I think the narrative process is a little bit different because we know people are engaging with the content, perhaps with more distractions around them and other environments than what we might have had once upon a time, where we kind of controlled that sort of movie or even TV sofa watching environment. I definitely feel like the parameters have changed, and it's forced me to be a more streamlined storyteller. I mean, years ago, people would do, like, let's say a corporate video, and they'd say, you know, let's do a 20-minute video. Can you even imagine a 20-minute video now? I mean, that's a whole half-hour TV show, basically, 22 or 30, whatever. So, you know, I'm in nonfiction short-form world, so I'm telling my stories in 3-4 minute packages that used to be 5, 6, 7 minute packages, and I'm also delivering all these other versions of the content. So, to me, it makes me a better storyteller. Is it challenging? Yes. Do I love it? Yes. Well, short form is exploding, and I would put it in sort of two different categories. There's like short form that's related to long form, so some kind of teaser, some kind of trailer, and then now I'm going to engage with the full-length movie or television series. And then there's what I do, which is just self-contained short form. And that is really exploding because the client, the distributor, if you will, has the tools of distribution now at their own disposal, whereas they used to have to send it to some other distribution entity, whether it was broadcast or non, whatever. So now that the producers have within their grasp the tools of distribution, it's wide open for how you get this to your market. And also we're seeing the channels of audience subdivided. So where once upon a time, you know, millions of people watched the same show all at the same time, now millions of people are watching separate channels of content that they're engaged with and interested in. And so you're able to deliver to that channel knowing exactly who your target audience is and what they're interested in. I think there's a couple different things going on. If you're in narrative particularly, then series obviously is the way to go. If you're in documentary space, even if it's a one-off, it needs to be packaged with a series of things that relate to the same content. So even though you might be the producer of this one item, it's really part of a bigger world of those items. In my world, monetization is not always a cash monetization because quite a few of my clients are actually not-for-profits who want people to engage with a subject. Okay, so they want, I basically say I make people cry and write big checks. So, you know, they want to click on my show, they cry, they click, and they want them to do something. Donate now, go change the world, save the whales, whatever it is. And so the bottom line is not, it's sometimes cash as a donation, but it's often something else, some human action that we want them to take. So we measure the impact a little differently. It's called direct response media. I mean, there is a whole genre.
And this is...
And I would say I'm genre adjacent in the sense that a lot of my content starts on big, big surfaces at live events where 20,000 people will all cry together, hopefully, and write the big check or go do something together. And then it'll live in smaller surfaces that they'll share and send around to their network. So our goal is often targeted sharing. I mean, as much as we'd love to have 1 million shares and likes of our shows, we'd actually much rather have 20,000 likes and shares in the group of people who actually might go out and do something about it. And so I think this is the evolution of social media generally, is that, you know, the metric used to just be how many thumbs up. It's okay. I mean, and of course, if you're trying to sell something, you know, maybe that's still your metric. There's certainly YouTubers who have millions of viewers and they monetize because they get advertisers, obviously, to underwrite that. But now we're a little more nuanced. Now it actually matters what happens after the share happens. We're actually looking for the number of embeds. We're actually looking for the number of reshares. We're actually looking for some more qualitative metrics. Do people comment on that and then actually share their own content that relates to that content? So things are getting a little more granular and a little more interesting. Right. Well, you know, audience metrics, there's a whole world that's not me that knows how to measure that stuff, and thankfully I don't have to do my own measuring. But I think one of the things that's really interesting is now we can measure while people are watching. I mean, it's something that obviously the networks were doing a long time ago with election coverage and people dialing, do they like or not like something a candidate's saying. But now some of that is embedded into platforms where we're showing videos so we can actually see in real time not just drop-off rates, but when people are engaging more with the content, when they might be typing or doing something or clicking on something. So there's a little more information about how they're engaging with the storyline, and that's pretty exciting to us as content producers, and also slightly terrifying because we like to think we know what to do with our stories. So, it's always a little scary when the audience is telling us. So I think virtual reality is the new frontier for content creators and for audience engagement. And we're still navigating. We're navigating what the workflow is. We're navigating what the tools are. We're navigating how the audience members interact and engage with our content. It's going to be a really exciting, brave new world. It's a little bit of the Wild West all over again. I mean, I've seen people experimenting with all kinds of rigs, all kinds of audio, trying to do this 360 audio experience. It's fascinating to me, but I think this is going to be the new amazing explosion in our industry, is if we can grasp how to tell those stories and what the audience wants to do, what kind of content they want to engage with. I think it's going to be sports. I think it's going to be news. It's certainly going to be in my world of, trying to get people to experience some emotional depth to some issue and translate that into action. So I'm very excited about VR. I'm ready to jump in. Now, I think the biggest roadblock for us as an industry is actually, with VR, is actually going to be the data stream. I mean, think about it. I mean, we're already having some issues with 4K, 8K is supposedly, right on our doorstep. Workflow is a little overwhelming. So gathering all that 360, stitching it all together, thousands of different iterations if the audience is choosing to go one way or another way. So I think it's all going to be about data management, file management. I mean, I hate to say it, it's not sexy. I would love to think it's all about which gels I choose and which lenses I choose to work with, but I think it's going to be all about the data and how do we manage that workflow.